So for reference, we are recording this webinar and we will share it on our YouTube page, link on our website. But welcome everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar as we kick off our professional development webinar series for the fall. This presentation is on ISAC and federal updates. My name is Manny. I'm a training and development specialist with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And I do have a few housekeeping items for those who are joining. So first and foremost, we are recording this session, as I mentioned, and we'll upload that information on our website along with the other webinars that we'll have in the future, so you can always access them in a later time. Now, if you are having trouble hearing me, you can connect your audio through your computer using the Call Me feature, and it will not disrupt the call for anyone else. I'd also like to point out that you can also zoom in and zoom out to any of the slides that I have on here that I'm sharing virtually. And again, it won't impede anyone else's vision on the slides. Closed captioning is also available. We have Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, I'm being joined by some of my colleagues that you'll see up the panel, up on the tool panel as panelists. So they are ready to answer any questions that you may have. And we can also check out our upcoming webinar schedule and also in-person schedule. So we also just kicked off our in-person schedule for the fall. That's available on our website. And lastly, we are also offering continuing education and professional development hours. So stay tuned. Towards the end, we'll have more information on how you can get that. Okay. So for those who are new, not sure about who we are, but ISAC, we're the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, so we are a state agency. I want you to think about us as the largest one-stop resource for financial aid information in the state. Our mission is to provide Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. We also administer scholarships and grants to students across the state of Illinois, such as the MAP grant. Some of you have received the MAP grant when you were in college. And also, in our division particularly, we provide professional development opportunities throughout the state, whether it's a webinar such as this one, and where we discuss topics and general updates, or whether we'll have conversations about the financial aid process, understanding student loan repayment processes, etc. So the agenda got a lot of information. Looks short, but we have a lot of information to cover. So we'll have some general updates from ISAC, as well as federal updates to see what's going on there, as well as some resources that I want to share with you all. So with that, we'll get started. So for those who follow the budget, right, maybe this will encourage you to follow your own budget. But looking at the current fiscal year, so our fiscal year for the state runs from July 1st to the end of June, so June 30th. So since July, months ago, right, as of July 1st of 2025, we started the fiscal year of 2026. So here's some highlights, right? So the Illinois state budget is about $55 billion. 2.6 of that goes towards higher education. Right? So we just look at, compared to last year, there's an additional 3% increase that went to, that's going, or will go, to 2-year and 4-year public institutions, so $44 million in total, divided between the two. We've also seen a $10 million increase to the MAP grant. So that's the Monetary Award Program, so that is the largest program administered at ISAC, and the appropriation sits over $720 million, in which the maximum award is $8,064. So here's some MAP grant highlights. And for those who need a refresher, MAP grant is a need-based financial aid program eligible to Illinois residents who attend an Illinois MAP approved school. So you cannot take the MAP grant out of state. How to apply for it? So it's a need-based, so you need to submit a FAFSA, which is the pathway for most students, or if you're qualifying undocumented students, you can submit an alternative application for Illinois financial aid. That'll determine your eligibility for the MAP grant. Now, the FAFSA, as I mentioned, is the pathway for most students because it also determines eligibility for the Pell Grant, which is the federal version of the MAP grant. Now, key things to note, we've already talked about the maximum award. I'm just duplicating here from the last slide. But the MAP grant is subject to appropriation. So what that means is that, think about a money inside a jar, and everyone who qualifies is trying to get a piece of the money that's inside the jar. Eventually that money runs out. There may be more people needing that money than funds available, right? And changes can happen mid-year, things of that nature. So it's important to note, and so we tell students all the time, when it comes to filling out a FAFSA, we want to make sure they fill out as soon as the application opens up, which we're getting word that is going to be October 1, right, 2025. And that will be the date sort of moving forward. So the MAP grant is often applied first, or it is applied first in Illinois because it is seen as the pillar of financial aid programs because it can only be applied to tuition and mandatory fees. Okay. Out of Illinois, the Pell Grant is applied first. But in Illinois, MAP grant, if a student is eligible, is applied first. So I think to know with last year's MAP grant, so the suspense date was Thursday, June 5th of 2025. So what that means is if as long as you applied before that date, on that date, before that date, you will be eligible for the MAP grant as long as funds are there and you're eligible for it. If you apply afterwards, though we'll still encourage you to submit an application, funds have been put in suspense, meaning that pending how things go in terms of students actually enrolling in classes and so forth, funds are no longer available, but it can open up. So that's what we tell students, and we've seen suspense dates roll even further back, right? And lastly, in terms of the 26-27 MAP grant startup formula, meaning the formula that determines what the maximum award is an agenda item that will be talked about in our upcoming commission meeting that is tomorrow. Some of you are familiar, may attend those, but just wanted to give that reference because we don't have the 26-27 information out yet. So we're still talking about the 25-26, which is this current award year. So since I'm talking about the MAP grant, I wanted to highlight some information that is in our ISAC data book, which you can also find other programs that we administer on there as well. So with this program, you can kind of see starting fiscal year 2010 on the website all the way to fiscal year 24 is that even though there are less MAP grant recipients, funding for MAP has increased. It increases the purchasing power of that, which also means that when I was a student at Roosevelt University 10 years ago, the FAFSA opened up in January, and by the time March and April hit, the MAP grant was done, it was full. And so now we're seeing the suspense date being further and further back because of those additional funds that are being appropriated. And to see what this slide talks about, it takes a deeper dive into who our MAP recipients are. So we've seen the majority, so 72% are under the age of 24. And we see that 24 year as an important reference point because for most students, until they reach the age of 24, are going to provide parent information on the FAFSA, and they're going to be called dependent students. And I don't want anyone to get confused with in terms of dependency and thinking about tax forms, right? This is specifically for financial aid. And we also see that majority of MAP recipients are utilizing those funds in the Chicago metropolitan area. And I also would like to point out that that pretty much coincides with the population distribution of the state, right? The state has about 12 million people, 9 million or so live in the Chicago metro area. And the majority of MAP recipients attend a public institution, whether it's a 4-year or 2-year, so almost 3/4, so it's good. So money is staying within the state or local entities, right? So staying local, even though the MAP grant is staying local, but yeah, I think you guys know what I mean. And half of MAP recipients, and this one, of course, uses 2024 data when the EFC was still available, 55% had an EFC of 0, right? Which we know 0 indicates the student is the neediest, right? And we can also see when we look at income thresholds that those who receive MAP, their income levels are lower, right? And another thing is they also come from larger family households, right? It's 8.3 for those who receive the MAP grant versus 2.5 for everyone else. So needy families, larger families. And as I mentioned about the graphic about where the MAP grant is spent, I like to highlight this because it really illustrates that most of the funds, if we look at the total appropriations nearing $700 million for 2024, for public school year, public 4-year, and including public 2-year, were over $400 million. Right? And so we have the green, which is the rest of the private not-for-profit institutions. So think about your DePaul universities, your Northwestern, University of Chicago, Illinois Wesleyans, McKendree University. I can go on and on, right? But those institutions, right? And then there's a small tiny graph on the top that represents proprietary institutions, which are for-profit institutions like Fox College, DeVry. There are only a handful of institutions that are for-profit in Illinois that take the MAP grant, but those are just some as an example. So in terms of the alternative application, I really don't have that much updates for it. So the 25-26 application opened up in December, right, coinciding with the release of the FAFSA. So the FAFSA was released a little bit earlier than the alternative application, but often, or is, released at the same time, just to avoid kind of confusion. For the 26-27 alternative application, we are expecting it to be available October 1, 2025, and we're also not expecting many changes to it. And even as we start seeing moving forward, unless we see another FAFSA Simplification Act, we're not going to see a huge difference in terms of what the FAFSA looks and feels like. So every year we're just going to see some soft updates. And the alternative application is patterned after the FAFSA. Oftentimes when they make language changes, we often coincide to follow that as well. A key difference between both applications is that the alternative application is only available for qualifying undocumented students. But in terms of the application itself, students will only answer questions in the alternative application that pertains towards calculating a student need index in SAI. Otherwise, the student will not see some of the questions that are asked on the FAFSA, like gender questions, or as well as the ethnicity questions or race questions. So I'm going to start getting into some legislation that was passed recently and the effective dates. So first thing I want to talk about is Public Act 103-0876, which makes changes to the in-state tuition eligibility criteria. So while this was signed last year, the effective date isn't until July 1st of 2026, so we still have some time. So for those who are wondering, well, if the criteria is changing, what's the current criteria? We'll talk a little bit about that. But essentially, this law is important because when it comes to the alternative application, to be considered a qualifying and documented student, you have to be considered an Illinois resident for in-state tuition purposes, which has been defined in Illinois since 2003. So it makes updates to that. So there's some expansion to that, some edits to that, but the key thing here is now there are going to be 2 pathways. So in prior years, it was just the one pathway. You had to meet all 5 of that criteria within that, the way the law was set up. But now with 2 pathways, a student has to meet all those 5 criteria, whether in pathway 1 or pathway 2. So I'll start kind of getting into them. And this takes effect until after July 1st of 2026, so for fiscal year 27. So the first pathway for Illinois students who are in a high school route. So think about this as the current rules. The only change is line item number 3. Prior years it was 3, now it will be 2. So I'll just go ahead and read it all. So you have to meet all these 5 criteria, reside with the parent or guardian while attending an Illinois private or public high school, graduated from a public or private high school or received the equivalent of a high school diploma in Illinois, attended a public or private high school in Illinois for at least 2 years before enrolling at the university. It currently is 3. So for students who are looking to submit an alternative application now, they are looking at the current criteria of 3 years, not 2 years. This doesn't take an effect until July 1st of 2026. They may not have established residency outside the state of Illinois. And lastly, they have to provide the institution with an affidavit stating that the individual will file an application to become a permanent resident of the United States at the earliest opportunity that they are eligible to do so. That's the first route. We can see how it is expanding to students from 3 years to 2 years. Right? The other one still looks at the 3 years. However, it's a combination of high school and community college. So again, students have to meet all 5 of this criteria. So the first one is they have to have attended an Illinois high school and or a community college for at least 3 years total, with at least 2 years in one institution before enrolling at the university. They've had to have graduated from an Illinois high school or received an equivalent of a high school diploma and earn an associate's degree or at least 60 transferable credit hours from an Illinois community college. They have to reside in Illinois before schooling. They can establish residency outside of Illinois. And similar to the question before, they have to agree to swear to affirm that they will file an application to become a permanent resident of the United States at the earliest opportunity that they are eligible to do so if they're not already a U.S. citizen. So the affirmation is built into the application in the alternative application. So students in the beginning self-certify that they are eligible for it. So there will be some changes in terms of the look and feel of that process, but again, it's not going to take an effect until after July 1st of 2026. Then we have Public Act 1040013, which is the FAFSA designee. So each high school must designate a point of contact for FAFSA-related issues and communication. So this designee must participate in training on the FAFSA graduation requirements, the systems used to track it, which is GAP Access, our Gift Assistance Program portal, and the supports available to them and to their students. And always as a reminder, with high schools, they can always rely on ISAC for providing this type of assistance and the support, including the next one, which is the school day FAFSA support, which is Public Act 104-0014, which is each public high school must offer help during the school day for students to complete their portion of the FAFSA or alternative application. The school may determine the format for this help, whether it's in class, a workshop, after school hours, in the weekend, and certainly they are encouraged to use ISAC. Some of you are familiar with the ISAC core. All of us on the training team, at some point, we're a core member. In the state, I'm saying at some point because some of us were core members a lot longer before than our current colleagues. But the key thing here is that there are free resources already available at your disposal that you can tap into. So never feel that you have to create something new or have additional programming. We are just an email away, a phone call away that can help you with all of these changes that are happening in all the states. The other thing I want to talk about is Public Act 104-0164, which is the RISE Act expansion. So this Public Act amends the current RISE Act that we have. So essentially, it clarified who is a qualifying student, and that they are eligible for those defined as a qualifying. And I remember these are the individuals who are considered an Illinois resident for in-state tuition purposes. We went over the criteria already and the updated criteria that's happening starting July 1st of 2026. But allows these individuals to apply for all state and local governments or public university financial aid programs. So this includes the MAP grant, this includes scholarships administered at public institutions, tuition waivers administered at ISAC and at public institutions, also women board assistance, and other programs, again, that are funded by public dollars, whether it is local or state. Okay. And I also do want to talk about our new initiative, One Click College Admit. So in part with this initiative, we have 2 versions currently out right now, which I'm going to call 1.0 and 2.0. So 1.0 was in its pilot phase, started last year, so we're continuing that program. The new one that I'm referring to is the 2.0 version. So essentially, what is One Click Admit? So it is the state of Illinois' free direct admissions program into public institutions, 4-year and 2-year. It removes traditional barriers, so students do not have to apply for that institution. You don't have to submit an essay, don't have to submit application fees. To be eligible, simply follow in the process that I'm going to go over in each of them, and you submit your GPA, right? And for the 1.0 version, for the 2.0 version, ISAC will be verifying your GPA on your behalf if you opt in. And the key thing that I want to mention here is that this process is not supplanting any existing process, with the exception of 2.0 moving forward, will be the only direct admissions program administered at the, excuse me. So right now we have two versions. This is not going to replace Common App's version of direct admissions. This is not going to replace the institution's own application process, so students are certainly more than welcome to apply to a public institution the traditional route, going through the Common App. But I want to be talking about that process for direct admissions, as this is the state of Illinois program. So as I mentioned, this year there are going to be two versions. For current seniors, that's the 1.0 version that I'm going to be referring to in this presentation, and then 2.0 will be for the class of 27, which are current juniors. So after this academic year, the 2.0 version will be the only one that'll be around. And we're not going to be calling it 2.0, it's just going to be one click call as admit. But so this year we're kind of referring to it as 1.0 and 2.0 so that we can try to not sort of confuse the two. So the first thing I want to mention about for current seniors, so the 1.0 version, is that this process is the same as the January launch date, so pilot program. So this is only going to be available for high school students, and there are only 16 participating institutions, 8 four-year and 8 community college, and it relies on students who are self-reporting their GPA. So what they will see, and this is going to be the key difference between 1.0 and 2.0, that 1.0 uses the self-reported GPA, and students can indicate whether it's a weighted or unweighted GPA, and they can input it, right? So when they enter their information, when they're creating their Common App account, they're indicating an Illinois address, so that flags Common App, oh, we could have a student who's eligible for a direct admission. Let's see what their GPA is. And they're going to be matching that for the student on their behalf, right? And so they'll get communication from Common App as to which institutions they are being matched with, right? So when they get that email, they can see their information within their account, and then they can act on those direct admissions offers inside the Common App. Now, number one question we've gotten in this, well, what about Common App's direct admissions program? Well, that's still going to be there. What this does is just puts it up to the list. Those who have an Illinois address or get prioritized will see those institutions from Illinois that are admitting them. And think about the admission I like to think about it more as on a conditional basis, in part because with any application, there's information you still need to verify, right? Like your GPA, submitting those transcripts. So they still have to complete that process through the institution, through the Common App, and those instructions will be provided on there. But they can certainly continue and submit their application that way. Again, this allows them to not have to pay for application fees, submit essays, and do all of that. Now with the 2.0 version, so this process is defined in state law. We started implementing this, created the opt-in process, but essentially this includes all of the public institutions that are participating in one way, shape, or form. So there are two institutions, UIUC and UIC, who are participating and having an outreach plan. I'll talk a little bit about that. But a key difference between the 1.0 version and the 2.0 version is that we are using verified GPA. What does that mean is that ISAC, as long as students opt in, when they opt in, or if they're under 18, the parents will opt in on their behalf, will give ISAC permission to match that data on their behalf and send that data over to Common App. And Common App will have, okay, what are each of these public institutions' requirements? What is the student's verified GPA? You'll get more of an official admissions offer. And they will still get their priority list, so they'll still come on top, and they will still see other direct admissions offers that are through Common App. I was on another webinar earlier this morning that there was a student who received multiple, I think it was over 40 direct admissions offers. But again, the Illinois ones will get prioritized. Another key difference, students are signing up during their junior year. So they can more than welcome to create their Common App account after they opt in, or they can create it during the summer or when they start their senior year. Otherwise, there's nothing else that they need to do, right? So ISAC is collecting the GPA requirements from the institutions, We have most of them, but they do have a deadline of March 1st of 2026 to submit that data to us. As I mentioned, UIUC and UIC are participating a bit differently. And the way they're participating is that they are providing us with a list of criteria in terms of which students that they are going to invite to apply. So based upon their criteria, I don't know what that GPA could be, but let's say hypothetically, it is a 3.5 GPA. So what they may say is if students who have that specific GPA, we'll invite them, hey, we're inviting you to apply to U of I, right? Not through direct admissions, but at least they'll get that communication through that. So high schools, there's a little bit of work for them that they need to do is provide us with their GPA of their juniors by July. So more information is forthcoming on that process. And then we're going to be matching that. So 1.0 Common App is doing the matching. 2.0 ISAC is doing the matching, right? So we're going to provide that match data to Common App. They're going to be reaching out to the student with a direct admissions offer, and the students can go through that and then determine which ones they want to accept, right? So then we're also going to be providing institutions and community colleges, because the thing is here, this process is not just available for high school seniors, or for high school juniors. The Common App 1.0 is only available for high school seniors. For the 2.0, it's available to juniors to opt in, and also community college students as well. So I want to keep it sense here. Another thing that I want to mention with any one of these direct admission programs is that it is not a financial aid program. So students still have to file a FAFSA or an alternative application if they want to be considered for financial aid. I do want to highlight a little bit of the opt-in process. So a parent has to provide consent to participating in the direct admissions program if the student is under the age of 18. Right? Otherwise, if the student is over 18, then they can opt in themselves. And they go through our website, One Click College Admit. There's a link where they can click in for the opt-in form. It takes them to their student portal website, which have to create an account with Common App, and they can sign up that way. And it takes about 3 minutes. Right? So only those who complete the opt-in process will be matched for direct admissions. So moving forward, students who want to be considered for direct admissions can only opt in their junior year. So if they don't opt in, they're not going to be able to participate in this program. Not to say that they can apply to the institution on a normal pathway or apply through the Common App itself. They can certainly still do that. This process is not removing any other existing process. It's just another alternative for that student. Okay. And then moving forward, counselors will be able to view a list of students who have opted in the gap access. Similar to how you can view that process, view a data on your seniors to see who've completed their FAFSA, who've completed a non-participation form, all of that, because we want our counselors to be able to see all that information laid out so that you can then target your specific group with then targeted messaging, right? Because it's helpful to know, oh, I have this group of students who opted in. I know that I can have this conversation with them. Or if I have students who didn't opt in, well, maybe I want to talk to them about it to see if they're interested in before that deadline, which I'll talk about some of that information. So some of the required fields, students have to provide their name. They have to provide an Illinois address. And if you're working with students who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of being homeless, certainly they are able to provide the address of their school. I just tell students similar to what we tell them on the FAFSA, just let the school know, and so that they, in case, to get the heads up. They have to provide their birth date. That's important to determine whether the student's over 18 or under 18. The telephone number, the email address. We're recommending students use a personal email address, not the high school email address. In part, what happens when you graduate, you lose access to that email address. So if they have their personal one, they can continue having access to that. And for community college students, we're collecting their college ID number. And that's going to be helpful for us in terms of matching that information. And also when students are going through the opt-in process, at the very end, there are going to be some optional questions for only the high school students, or community college students won't see those optional questions. So some of those questions pertain to the student's first generation status, their race and ethnicity. Again, this is optional. They don't have to answer these. Their gender, as well as if they're interested in signing up for ISAC Q&A. So for those who aren't familiar with ISAC Q&A, ISAC Q&A is a platform administered at ISAC where we send targeted communication to the student in regards to FAFSA, alternative application, things of that nature. I apologize. I am recovering from a cold, or currently have a cold. So I want to provide the timeline for the 2.0 version. So the opt-in platform opened last month, August 15th. So it's been around for a little bit over a month now. So students are still able to opt in. Right? That's what's going on now. By the spring, we want to have, not earlier, we will have host webinars on any updates, GPA requirements, uploading process. So right now we've built the opt-in process, and we're currently building is the internal process. So by the time spring hits, our goal is to have a presentation where we can talk about what does that internal process look like for counselors, what user guides are available to them they can use to better understand this program and to be able to successfully implement this program at their schools. And the opt-in date deadline, right, is May 22nd. And if we look at this calendar, it is the Friday before Memorial Day, right? So really pick that deadline. And getting into July 1st is that deadline in which high schools have to submit GPA requirements. But again, we have a lot of time to talk about that process. So it isn't we're going to talk about it now, leave you guys out to figure it out by July 1st. We're going to have continued outreach and communication about what that process will look like. We'll have detailed user guides and different materials that you can utilize, again, for successfully implementing this program. And the goal is by September, by this time next year, students are going to get notified of direct admissions offers and instructions on their next steps. So in the way I think about this in an ideal situation is you have students who are maybe not even thinking about college, they're juniors and thinking, well, I still have time to think about it. They do a 3-minute opt-in form, forget about it, create a Common App account because a lot of schools who use Navi on different platforms are using it anyway. And students will hear about it through an ISAC core member or another resource. And then boom, come September, this time, they haven't even applied to any colleges yet. They haven't even thought about which ones they're thinking about going to or narrowing down the focus, or maybe they still haven't thought about it. And you'll see some offers from some institutions. Every student will see at least one, right? It'll be from the local community college, but every student will see some sort of matched offer, right? And the program is designed that way so that students can have a level of comfort in knowing that if you thought about going to college, you are accepted at least into these institutions, right? And we have also some resources available for them as well, whether it's FAQs for juniors, FAQs for seniors, or step-by-step guides, as well as information on webinar recordings that were hosted by our colleagues from ICCB, as well as, IBHA and then Common App and ISAC. Okay. So that's it for state updates. I'm going to do some federal updates now. So I want to highlight the new parent contributor flow. And the reason why I'm highlighting this, and the first thing I want to point out here is that this particular platform is best recommended for students who start off the application and invite their parents to contribute their information onto the FAFSA. Because the current version, if we can remember what it looks like, when a student is inviting a parent, they have to enter social security number, date of birth, and all that information. Now it's just going to be an invite code. An invite code that's not going to expire, that's not going to contain confusing information, that's not going to ask them to provide a mailing address if the parents don't have a social security number. It's just going to be that invite code that students can copy and paste, keep a hold of it, send it, text it to their parents. Parents are going to get an email. The student will get an email letting them know that they sent this code to that individual. They can always go back, the student can always go back and resend that code in case they accidentally sent it to the wrong person. The parent, again, that code does not expire, so the parent will see that in their account summary when they log in to their studentaid.gov account to then notified, oh, I've been invited to complete to provide my information on the FAFSA. As a contributor. So parent will see this email, it's what it looks like. They can accept that invitation through the link, or they can go online, FAFSA.gov, input that information, copy that code that's there. Again, it doesn't expire. It's not case sensitive. So it streamlines the process. The other thing that is different is that when a student invites a parent, right, depending on the student's parents' marital tax filing status, like if you have an instance in which students' parents are married and both filing jointly, then only one parent needs to sign the application. However, they still need to provide that date of birth of the other parent. That's all they need to provide. If the parent is inviting the other parent as contributors, what can happen is if you have a student's biological parents that are not married but are living together, then you need two information, right? Two people to contribute, two parents to contribute information on the FAFSA. Or if you have an instance in which students' parents are married but they filed separate returns, and you also need two individuals to put their information on the application, because if that happens and they need an email address so they can send that invitation over to that individual. So that's why that's the exception for that email address. Otherwise, like if I think about my situation when I was filing a FAFSA, my parents filed married jointly, it would just be one individual, and then I would just be writing that date of birth of that parent. So to summarize this process, invite codes never expire. Email addresses that you use to mail that invite code or email that invite code doesn't have to be the same one that the contributor used to create their studentaid.gov account. I recommend it, but it doesn't have to be. And also the contributor has to accept that invite. And if there's an instance in which they misspelled something or they sent it to the wrong person, they could go back into the student's FAFSA and resend that invite and then send it back out. And then that code will be different. Otherwise, the code stays the same unless the student resends it. I also want to talk about some data matching updates. So last month, the Department of Education announced that for those creating a studentaid.gov account, there will be an instant IRS match. Now, what that means is that in the past, you've had to wait 1 to 3 business days for your FAFSA to be matched in order to use to fully be able to use your account access to your account. Now, even if you're unable to match that data, or you're still creating your studentaid.gov account for the first time, whether it's successfully matched or not, you can still sign the FAFSA, so that's still something you're able to do. We just don't have full access to the account until it gets matched. So if there is a mismatch, you will see some instant rejection that may occur, and the user can always just try again. All right. I also want to mention that the instant match right now is not currently available for those who have an ITIN, so it's an individual taxpayer identification number. Right? It's used for tax filing purposes for those who do not have a social security number. So again, it's just used for tax filing purposes. So that's not available yet. The Department of Education did mention that FSA's federal student aid, it did mention that they will be working on a solution and that it probably won't be available for the 26-27 cycle, but it's something that they are working on for the future. I also want to highlight a change in terms of the investment questions and part of the One Big Beautiful Act made some changes to this. So that's highlighted in the gray. What's in the orange, it's what's been the case for the last 2 years since FAFSA simplification. So essentially, if you meet any one of these criteria, whether your parents make less than $60,000 a year, or you, if you're an independent student, make less than $60,000 a year, and you didn't file any one of the schedule forms listed on there, A, B, D, E, F, or H, or you didn't file a Schedule C with a net business income of not more than $10,000 of a loss or a gain, or at any time in 2024, 2025, someone in your family, whether it was you, if your parents and any of the other dependents under your parents' family received a means-tested federal benefit program, such as TANF, so Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, etc., or if the student that has a negative student aid index or they qualify for the maximum Pell, investment questions will not be asked for that individual. In fact, when they're completing it online, they're not even going to see it. Now, what's changed because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OBBA, 3 B's in there, which I'll talk more later on, but they haven't formally announced what it is. They brought back an exclusion. So you can have individuals who have to report assets and they have a small business, right, or a family business. So if they do, they're only going to report that net worth of that family business if they have 100 or more full-time employees. So if they have 100 or less full-time employees, they don't have to report that value of that business, right? They also don't have to report the farm in which the family resides. You're always still, it's been the case for at least since I was filling out a FAFSA as a student, right? You never report the home in which you live in, so that's still obviously the case. And what's also included this year is the net worth of a commercial fishing business and related expenses owned and controlled by the family. So if it's any one of these three criteria, it doesn't get reported on the FAFSA. Right? It may still have to report cash, value of their cash, checking and savings, and answer other investment questions, but in terms of related to their small business, they have 100 or fewer employees, it's not common. For those who have been in financial aid for a long time, can remember that rule, or you may have to kind of think about it and kind of locate that somewhere in the back of your head and kind of remind that. So I talked about changes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed a few months ago. I'm using the acronym OBBBA or OBBBA, OBA. I don't know if in the world of financial aid, maybe we can have a new acronym for this. But there are some significant changes in the world of financial aid, and I've done my best to kind of document them here. And I've also linked in a tool from NASFA, the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, because they put this nice chart together that highlighted all the major changes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act as it pertains to your students, whether it is loans, repayments, FAFSA, all that information. I think it's super helpful, especially the space that we're in to really kind of keep up of what's happening. So now it requires that foreign income be included in the AGI used to calculate Pell Grant eligibility. In the past, it was up to the discretion of the institution if they wanted to use it or not, or include it or not. It has to be included. And then students who receive grants or scholarships from non-federal sources covering their entire cost of attendance are not eligible for the Pell Grant, even if they're otherwise eligible for the program. Also, an applicant with a student aid index equal or greater to twice the maximum Pell Grant award are not eligible for the Pell Grant. So right now for the 26-27, that threshold is 14,790. So for those who don't know, the maximum Pell Grant is 7,395. So if you multiply that by 2, that's what that's equivalent to. That's where that number comes out of. But the exception does not include students who qualify for the Pell Grant under the special rule. And those are for individuals who parents were U.S. Armed Forces, or served in the U.S. Armed Forces and were killed post 9/11, or they are a public safety service officer and they were killed in the line of duty, because those individuals are eligible for the Pell Grant regardless of what their student aid index is. Now looking at the direct loan program, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just want to bring awareness to this. It eliminates the Graduate Plus Loan Program and also sets limitations to students who are pursuing a graduate degree or a professional degree. So a professional degree is like a law degree, medical school. Because as we know now, if you take out a plus loan, there is no sort of limit. Well, I guess there is. It's the total cost of attendance. You can borrow up to that amount, right? But it doesn't set an aggregate amount like other student loan programs. So now there are going to be aggregate amounts. Of course, there are some legacy provisions, so there are going to be some grandfather clause for those who currently have those loans and are in school. They can still use that up to 3 academic years or the remainder of their academic program, whichever is less. Institutions can also impose their own lower program loan limits. However, they can't do it on a case-by-case basis. It has to be program-specific, and the effective date is listed up here, July 1st of 2026. Also, for student loan borrowers, those who are in repayment, there are some significant changes here. I don't have too much details on the new repayment plans that are happening, but essentially, if you are a new borrower after July 1st of 2026, you can only repay back your loans using 2 plans, a new standard repayment plan and the new income-based repayment plan called the Repayment Assistance Program, also called RAP. Essentially, those will be the only 2 programs that are going to be around. So for those who are current borrowers and in repayment, you can still use the standard repayment plan, graduated repayment plan, extended repayment plan. You can still switch between repayment plans. You can also opt into the repayment plan when it opens up and becomes available. You can do that up until July 1st of 2020, in which at that point, we all have to be in a new plan. So more information is forthcoming. So I don't know the significant details between the two. I would love to include them. I'm certain you will hear more from us about this. Also want to mention something about the Parent Wizard tool. So that was a new feature that was added into the application. So it's since been removed and sort of rebranded as the Who Counts as a Parent on the FAFSA form. So in the past, last year, year before, you were able to do that within the application. Last year, the Department of Education also opened up the platform outside of the FAFSA, but it was still incorporated inside. So students, here's a screenshot, students can still go through that platform and see it, but it's going to take them out. I mean, they're going to leave the FAFSA, but it'll open up a new tab where they can complete it. And I still call it the Parent Wizard tool, and the tool is helpful to helpful in determining the student about which parent information they need to provide, because there's some indicators that if the parents are not married, if the parents are remarried, what is the student, which is the parent that provides most financial support if the parents are separated or divorced. So it allows the student to give them a better idea of whose parent information needs to be provided on there. Also, the state of residence has been updated. This is a great thing because we've had a lot of confusion in this in the past. The word legal has been removed. Now it is just, in the FAFSA, we'll say the parent state of residence. Also, we'll say the student state of residence because it's duplicated on the first on the screen, that just shows the parent version. Excuse me. And this is game changing because we had a lot of parents who, students who have mixed status parents, or students who are undocumented, or students who are varying visa types that thought it was asking if they had legal permanent residency status, right? So hopefully that will minimize the confusion because this question, as always, has just been asking and to try and figure out where does the student reside, right? And the direct unsubsidized loan, every year there's sort of a refresh on this question. And so the words apply for have been removed. So last year it said apply for direct unsubsidized loan only. We've seen a lot of students get confused by this question because they figure, well, I'm applying for the FAFSA. Core members keep telling me to apply. Yeah, I'm applying for a direct subsidized loan. That's because it's the FAFSA. That happens a lot. And so what this is telling the institution is that you're not able to provide parent information. You're a dependent student. You can't provide parent information. You just want to be considered for unsubsidized loans only, right? So unless the student has a situation like that, it's always going to be no. And for asset information, this is a screenshot illustrating that how the new determination will appear. So if they get into the question that says, list your current net worth of business and or investment farms, the updated notes will say, enter the net worth of your students' business and income producing farms. Net worth is the value of the business and farms minus any debts owed to them. Don't include a family business with 100 or fewer full-time employees, farms where the family resides, or commercial fishing business and related expenses. So it tells them there exactly what to include and not include. Okay, so I want to highlight some resources. So first thing I want to talk about is our ICANN network, so Illinois College Access Network. We actually just had a meeting earlier this morning where we talked about one-click college admin in greater detail. So essentially, ICANN is a network of college access practitioners. And our mission is to improve the post-secondary access and success for low-income first-generation students. So you can join today. There's no financial commitment. This initiative is ran by ISAC. And I wanted to highlight our 4 objectives to really illustrate sort of what we're all about. We're here to increase visibility of Illinois college access programs and services, dismantling college access, disseminating. I try to read that again. This English is not my first language. Dismantling or disseminating college access research and best practices, providing professional development and technical assistance for college access providers, as well as facilitating communication collaboration. So we did have different topics, different conversations that we have. It really is a robust community of individuals who really do care about student outcome success in higher education. Then we have our FAFSA communication toolkit. So as we get ready for the FAFSA, it opens up, we have different resources available at your disposal that you can use to help get the word out to your students and families. We have email templates, robocall scripts that you can use in English and Spanish, and different social media posts that you can use and copy and edit to include any information related to an event that you are hosting. at your school. We also want to talk a little bit about our First Generation Scholars Network. So the First Gen Network is a free resource available to students who are going to be the first in their family to earn a college degree. And at ISAC, when we think about college, we think about any post-secondary institution that awards a credential, right? So it could be an associate's degree, a four-year degree, right? So joining this network allows a student to get support and resources from ISAC. We also can connect them to a first-generation student mentor, the ISAC Core. We can also help them find a first-generation program on campus, as well as invitations to different check-in events and other opportunities and materials, giveaways, and things like that that we have for students. So students can join on our website. If they have any questions, you can always email isac.firstgen@illinois.gov. And lastly, as we kind of close off, we have our ISAC connection tool that if you text us, 847-250-2384, it's a real number. We are real people who answer your questions. So this resource is available for college access professionals. If you have any questions out in the field, we will get you a response. So you can hear real questions, feel free to still email us, things like that, but this allows you to get a sort of different approach for those individuals who prefer texting over sending out an email. And for those who need CE and PD hours, so we're going to get the chat opened up so you guys can copy. Yep, looks like it's already there. Thank you, Salma. So you guys can either take a picture or scan the QR code that's on here. You can take a copy the link that's shared on the chat. You may have seen an alert that popped up in the bottom. So the evaluation, we need you to submit it by September 19th, which is Friday, by 4:30 p.m. If you get that to us, we'll get you your C's and PDs, whatever you indicated you needed, or if you just want to provide feedback, let us know how we did, if there are any topics you'd like us to cover. But certainly, if you need PD hours, we need your EIN, which is your Illinois Educator number, right? So once you provide that to us, we'll send you the appropriate documentation within 2 weeks after this webinar. I'll be just here for a couple seconds before I kind of close off. Okay, so I'd like to say thank you all for attending this presentation. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the last few days of summer. Start getting your sweaters ready. And for those who don't know about ISAC's e-messaging service platform, you can sign up at isac.org/e-messaging. Copy and paste that, and we'll see you out in the field. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.